The chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve hints that interest rates will remain at a 22-year high at its next meeting. And the International Monetary Fund says India's contribution to global growth is set to go up. We'll look into why that's happening and the challenges. Hello and welcome to Asia Business Report with me, Arunoday Mukharji. We're going to start with the US, where we are counting down to an important speech by the US president in half an hour from now. In fact, we're keeping an eye out for any major announcements on possible funding amidst reports that President Biden is preparing to request a wartime aid package for Israel and Ukraine. But staying with the US and the economy, let's tell you what the head of America's central bank, Jerome Powell, has been saying. Well, he's hinting that the Federal Reserve may leave rates on hold at its next meeting. Here's the BBC's North America business correspondent, Michelle Fleury, with more from New York. All right, Archana Shukla there talking about the positive outlook, but also the challenges. Before we go, a quick check off the markets and the US markets and how they closed. Well, they all closed in the red. As you can see, the Nasdaq, the Dow as well, are all in the red, obviously also in response to what we heard the chair of the US Federal Reserve say, hinting that interest rates will, of course, remain at a 22-year high as well. That's all for the moment on Asia Business Report. You can find much more updates on the BBC News website. Thanks very much for watching.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this morning. But I'll be fair. And we just want to hear what you've got to say. So, shall we get on with it?
We're rolling.
Here we go. Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Koonsberg. Sundays at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
And we're about to head to the White House, where in about 15 minutes, President Joe Biden will be making a primetime address stressing the need for increased funding for Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and the U.S.-Mexico border. These are live images of the White House right now, lit up in pink for breast cancer awareness. Now, this will be just President Biden's second speech from the Oval Office, and it comes after his whirlwind visit to the Middle East on Wednesday. I'm Sumi Somaskanda in Washington. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour. President Biden's new funding requests are aimed at boosting some of the most pressing issues facing the globe. The expected request will total some $100 billion. That will likely include $10 billion in defense funding for Israel and also around $60 billion for Ukraine. Of course, any funding measure must pass both the Democratic-led Senate and the Republican-led House, which is currently without a speaker. Now, as we wait for the speech to begin, let's get the latest on the situation in Israel as its war with Hamas continues. Egyptian state media are reporting that the Rafah crossing into Gaza will be open for several hours on Friday to allow for the delivery of some aid. President Biden has secured a deal with Egypt to allow up to 20 trucks to enter, but aid agencies have been issuing warnings about the worsening humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. The UN says Gaza is on the brink, with more than 100 trucks needed every day to support some 2 million Palestinians. Meanwhile, both sides continue to exchange fire. The Israeli defense minister has told his troops they will soon see Gaza from the inside. And Israel now says there are 203 hostages being held in Gaza. That is higher than previously reported. In just the last few hours, the Pentagon said a U.S. Navy ship on Thursday shot down missiles and drones that had been fired by Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, possibly at Israel. And tonight's speech also comes as the chaos on Capitol Hill continues. The House of Representatives has been without a leader for more than 2 weeks. Republican Jim Jordan has tried and failed twice this week to win the gavel. There may be another vote on Friday morning. Now, in just a matter of minutes, President Biden is expected to make his case tonight for more aid to Israel and for the ongoing war in Ukraine in his Oval Office address. Earlier today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with Mr. Biden to thank him and for the U.S. support and discuss future needs that he has. We're going to discuss this tonight with my guests, and I'd like to introduce them now. We have Khalid Al-Gindi, who is the director of the Middle East Institute's program on Palestine and Palestinian-Israeli affairs. Sabrina Siddiqui is the White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal. And here with me in studio, is Elise Labott, who is with us from Zivi Media. Great to have you all. And I'm going to start with Sabrina, because she was just also covering President Biden's trip. And Sabrina, if I can ask you, first of all, what exactly are you expecting the president to say?
Are feeling dehumanized.
Okay, I got to cut you off because we're seeing the president in the Oval Office. Let's listen in.
Yep.
My fellow Americans, we're facing an inflection point in history. One of those moments where the decisions we make today are going to determine the future for decades to come. That's what I'd like to talk with you about tonight. My fellow Americans, thank you for your time. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
All right, you have been watching a primetime address there from President Joe Biden speaking about the need to increase funding for Israel and for Ukraine as well, drawing a broad arc there. And I want to bring our guests back in who we've been discussing with this evening. Right now, I think Lonnie Chen is still with us and Khaled El-Gindi, and we also have Elise Labott in studio. And I want to go right to Lonnie Chen because, Lonnie, I know that you have to head out in just a few minutes. So I just want to quickly get your reaction on the president's address. Okay. Well, really interesting to get your thoughts, Khaled El-Gindi. I know we have to let you go, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with us tonight on the program. A really interesting perspective. And of course, we're going to continue with this coverage, but really interesting discussion we've been having with our guests, just as we heard the president deliver his address in the Oval Office, asking for more aid for Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and also the U.S.-Mexico border.
American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with. To put all that at risk, if we walk away from Ukraine, if we turn our backs on Israel, it's just not worth it. That's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine.
There are signs that Israel is readying itself for a possible ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. Israel's defense minister has told troops on the border with Gaza that they will soon see the Palestinian enclave from inside. The Israeli military has been readying itself for an expected ground incursion into the territory, whilst the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told other troops, "We will win." Jordan has said that it fears the worst from what's to come. The United Nations and aid agencies say lack of water, food, medicine and other essentials is making the situation for displaced people in Gaza increasingly desperate. Egyptian state media say the Rafah crossing into Gaza will be open for several hours later today to allow the delivery of supplies. Lorries are at the border, although aid agencies fear the first consignments will not be nearly enough. The UN says designated shelters are overcrowded, water cannot be pumped or filtered because of Israel's block on fuel, and bottled water is now unaffordable for most families. Rishi Sunak will continue his tour of the Middle East today amid growing fears in the region that the conflict in Gaza could spread. Key Arab leaders are gathering in Egypt ahead of a summit this weekend to discuss the crisis. In Saudi Arabia last night, the Prime Minister met the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Number 10 said the pair agreed the loss of innocent lives in Israel and Gaza over the last 2 weeks had been horrific. Mr. Sunak's spokesman said he encouraged Saudi Arabia to use its influence to support stability in the Middle East. Here, as you've been hearing with Joe, votes continue to be counted in the Mid-Bedfordshire and Tamworth by-elections. We could have declarations in the next hour. Turnout in Tamworth was 35.9%. That is low even for a by-election. The vote followed the resignation of the former Conservative Deputy Whip Chris Pincher in September. Our team in Tamworth say Labour figures are feeling pretty confident. Turnout in Mid-Bedfordshire was 44%. The poll was triggered by the resignation of Nadine Dorries. The former Conservative Culture Secretary had a majority of nearly 25,000 in 2019. One senior Conservative there has told us it is too close to call. Well, our polling expert, Sir John Curtis, says the low turnout is a warning to the political parties.
Truth is, it's looking as though that the fall in turnout in by-elections in this Parliament is going to be higher than it has been in any previous post-war Parliament. It's now running at around, on average, at a drop of 28 points. The last time we had really very precipitate drops in turnout was the Parliament of 1997 to 2001, at the end of which we had turnout in the general election of less than 60%. So I think there certainly is a warning here to our politicians. that the voters are indeed not at the moment particularly encouraged to turn out and vote. But just in case the Conservative Party are saying, well, hang on, that therefore means they're going to come back to us, we should also say that there was actually, on average, a 24-point drop in turnout in the 92 to 97 Parliament. And I don't need to remind Conservative politicians what happened at the end of that.
The body of a 57-year-old woman has been recovered from a river in Angus as Storm Babette sweeps across eastern Scotland. Hundreds of people have been told to leave their homes. A rare red weather warning is in force for Angus, Aberdeenshire and parts of Perthshire, which means there is a risk to life. While the focus is on the situation in eastern Scotland right now, there is also concern over the impact of rainfall expected to build up on the eastern side of the Pennines and Peak District, as well as parts of Greater Manchester, Cheshire and the Borders, with easterly winds piling rain into the area during the day. A Met Office amber warning comes into force from noon, with up to 120 millimetres of rain possible, with flooding and disruption likely. Finally, train passengers are facing another 6 months of potential strikes. It's after members of the RMT union voted to continue taking strike action in their dispute about pay, jobs and conditions. The dispute with rail companies has already been going on for nearly 18 months. There are, however, no fresh strike dates yet to be announced. I'll be back with an update later. Now back to Joe and our by-election special.
Yes, welcome back as we await the results from the two by-elections, one in Tamworth in Staffordshire and the other in Mid-Bedfordshire. Both seats vacated by two Conservative MPs who stepped down in, well, slightly difficult circumstances, let's put it that way. We're hoping to get both results within the next hour or so, but for certainly the next few hours, we have Jonathan Ashworth, who has swapped places with Bridget Phillipson.
Hello.
For those, hello to you, Shadow Paymaster General. If you were looking at both these by-elections now, huge majorities for Conservatives in rock-solid Tory seats. Which one would you be more confident about for Labour? We all want to grow the economy. Let's just have a look at what's going on in Tamworth. Let's have a listen in because it looks like it looks like the returning officer is about to make an announcement.
Better growth under Labour, Robert.
Thank you very much.
A little high couple.
Lovely to meet you.
Yes, now that looks like the Labour candidate there being talked to by the returning officer. So everybody is filing in. There clearly is going to be the result very shortly. We can see the Liberal Democrat candidate there too. We're just waiting for Andrew Cooper, whom I can't see just as yet, who's the Conservative candidate there in Tamworth. But clearly they are getting prepared for the result in the Tamworth by-election. It'll be quite something if Labour actually takes this from the Conservatives, because it will have meant a massive swing away from the Tories, who have held this since 2010 with a very significant majority. Let's have a listen.
Show your pretty eyes.
Are there any other candidates going to join us on the stage? Okay, thank you.
Well, I think the returning officer is waiting to see if any of the other candidates that have taken part from any other parties in this Tamworth by-election are going to appear, but it looks as if they're all gathered now. Well, not the Conservative candidate, but let's see. Maybe that is why there is the slight pause from the returning officer waiting for the Conservative candidate, whom you would expect to be on the stage, Andrew Cooper, because he might have won. You never know.
Sorry for the short intermission.
Well, it looks like there is going to be a little bit of a wait while they find Andrew Cooper. Everybody's looking round to see where is the Conservative candidate. because the other parties, or certainly the main parties, are waiting. You can see there for the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, certainly, hoping to hear the result. But it's interesting to know whether Andrew Cooper's not there because he's lost, or they think it's so close that, of course, they might be wanting to have a recount. But these are all the sort of realms of speculation that I am entering into while we wait. All a bit difficult for the candidate standing there, watching and waiting with the returning officer to find out what's happening. Katie, what do you make of it without the Conservative candidate there?
Raises quite a few questions.
It does. Without giving us any...
if it is the case that Labour wins, and we're about to find out, I mean, it's clearly a result that's going to be very disappointing for that Conservative candidate, and means, because of what's happening, we think, with Eddie Hughes, the Tory MP, if this Tory candidate does not get the seat, they're unlikely to be the candidate picked at the general election. It will then go to Eddie Hughes, the current Tory MP, who's planning to switch seats. So it's really their only chance to go for Tamworth.
Right. Well, we're being told, I understand, that the Conservative candidate isn't even in the hall. Now, I would be the last person to criticise a returning officer, there for the grace of God go I, but one might have thought we'd have found out if all the main candidates standing in this by-election were actually in the building before gathering everybody up on the stage. So there's obviously a search going on for Andrew Cooper.
Well, I mean, having been in many elections,
yes.
There's been a huddle of
yes,
and
exactly.
to tell them the result before. Let's let the public in on the secret. The candidates don't come on the platform
without knowing
the result. We know the result. Sorry about it.
You pulled the curtain back on the by-election. What are we going to do on the next one?
I've even been a by-election candidate. I know.
Oh, there he is. There he is. He's appeared. He's appeared.
Very good.
Right.
The election of a Member of Parliament for Tamworth on Friday, the 20th of October. I, Andrew Barrett, being the acting returning officer at this election, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at said election is as follows. Bill Cliff Robert, UK Independence Party, 436 votes. Cooper, Andrew, commonly known as Andy Cooper, the Conservative Party candidate, 10,403 votes. Cooper, Ian Stewart, Reform UK, 1,373 votes. Edwards, Sarah Sienna, Labour Party, 11,719 votes. Hope, Alan, commonly known as Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, 155. Howarth, Susan Gale, commonly known as Sue Howarth, Green Party, 417. Longman, Peter George, 86. Simon Ashley, Britain First, Stop the Boats, 580. Virk Sundeep Singh, commonly known as Sonny Virk, Liberal Democrats, 417. The number of ballot papers rejected was as follows. For want of an official mark, 0. Voting for more candidates than the voter was entitled to, 9. Writing or mark by which voter could be identified, 1. Being unmarked or wholly void for uncertainty, 34, which gives a total of 44. Vacant seats is 1. The electorate is 71,302. Ballot paper issued, 25,630, which gives a turnout of 35.95%. And I do hereby declare that Sarah Sienna Edwards is duly elected.
Well, that's Sarah Edwards, who is the new MP, the Labour MP for Tamworth. It's a pretty stunning victory for the Labour Party after all the talk that we have had. 11,719 votes cast to her, but that gives Labour a 23.9% swing. Keir Starmer has been very quick off the mark in terms of responding and saying this is a phenomenal result that shows Labour is back in the service of working people and redrawing the political map. To those who have given us their trust and those considering doing so, Labour will spend every day acting in your interests and focused on your priorities. Labour will give Britain its future back. Congratulations, Jonathan Ashworth. What did you make of what she said? Quite a confident speaker there and quite a confident speech, talking about hope.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah Edwards is now the new MP in Tamworth, the new Labour MP in Tamworth, and we can speak to her. There she is. Hello to you, Sarah. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you very much. Hello.
It's a historic win. The Conservatives last won this seat with almost 20,000 votes in 2019. What do you think it says about the mood of the country? Sarah Edwards, now the new MP, the new Labour MP in Tamworth. Congratulations to you. We'll let you go, but we'll have a look here for our guests and our viewers at the figures and what actually happened in Tamworth. Interestingly, you can see there, Sarah, we've just spoken to her. She topped the poll there, 11,719, with a majority, I mean, not a huge majority, but a majority of 1,316 over the Conservative candidate, Andrew Cooper. It was a low turnout of 36%. But the most interesting figures, of course, are what the changes are. 46%, though, in terms of the share of the vote for Labour and 41% for the Conservatives. And we can see the change in support there. That's the important figure. The Conservatives losing 26% and Labour gaining 22% to give them that victory in Tamworth and a swing of 23.9%. And that is a pretty historic swing. In fact, we'll put it into context with Sir John Curtis, who can tell us your reaction, John, in case they're about to announce the result there in mid-Bedfordshire. Again, all those huddles that Robert Buckland was talking about will have happened. So the candidates know who's won. So we're just waiting. But again, I can't see the Conservative candidate. Is this a pattern going on behind...
OK, good morning, everybody.
Here we go.
I, Russell Beard, being the returning officer at the election of a Member of Parliament for the Mid-Bedfordshire Parliamentary constituency held on Thursday the 19th of October 2023, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the election is as follows.
Alistair Strathern there giving his victory speech, and well deserved to give a victory speech because it's the first Labour MP for Mid-Bedfordshire in almost 100 years. As he said, nowhere is off limits, it seems, for the transformed Labour Party under new leadership, because Mid-Bedfordshire is made up of many rural parts, villages, not necessarily traditional territory for the Labour Party. But Jonathan Ashworth, it really is Labour's night.
Another phenomenal result, and I think that surely must be a 20% swing.
Well, we're waiting for the figures, but it must be close to that, I would think. So yes, it's right up there with Selby and Ainsty and with Tamworth
and Rutherglen
and
I think that just shows you right across the country, from Scotland to the Midlands to Bedfordshire.
Well, let's have a look at the figures because we want to know what the all-important swing is. So if we show the figures for the candidates, and the winning one in this case, Labour's Alistair Strathern, Mid-Bedfordshire, nearly 14,000, majority of just over 1,100 over Festus Akinbosoye, who had 12,680, Police and Crime Commissioner, the Conservative candidate. But as we've been saying, the Liberal Democrat, Emma Holland-Lindsay, very strong showing there on nearly 9,500, and it was a higher turnout than Tamworth of 44%. If we see here the share... 34% for Labour, 31% for the Conservatives, 23% for the Liberal Democrats. I mean, it was competitive in that sense for the three parties. The drop there of 29% from the Conservatives, giving Labour a 12% increase and the Liberal Democrats 11% in the seat that Labour have just gained, and the swing. Let's have a look. So Conservatives to Labour it is. It's over 20%. So Jonathan Ashworth, right, it's right up there with the other.
That's the fourth seat now with a 20%.
Well, John Curtis, again, it really is Labour's night with a pretty impressive swing there from the Conservatives to them. Well, let's hear from the winning candidate, now MP, the new Labour MP for Mid Bedfordshire, Alistair Strathern. First of all, congratulations to you, Alistair, after what's obviously been a very long and exhausting campaign. What do you think now? You may only have a year until the general election. What will you focus on? Alistair Strathern, thank you very much and congratulations again. You're welcome. Listening to Alistair Strathern there, a lot of focus on decency and service, maybe trying to sort of press the point about his predecessor, Nadine Dorries, but also politics in general, because that is one of the reasons that a lot of people have been turned off politics. It's not just the big issues that we've talked about, the economy and health. It's about politics itself.
Boring.
I'm going to have to cut you off because that's all we have time for. But thank you to all of our guests for sticking with me, keeping me company throughout the night. And it's been a big night, an interesting night too, but a big night for Labour. 2 by-election wins in Mid Bedfordshire and in Tamworth. Neither of these seats traditional Labour territory, but they have won quite stunning victories in both. We will chew over these results and give you more analysis tomorrow in Politics Live. I'll be up in a few hours' time again to present that at 12:15 tomorrow. But Alistair Strathern, the new Labour MP in Mid Bedfordshire, and Sarah Edwards, the new Labour MP in Tamworth, will have plenty to celebrate after those long campaigns. But from all of us here, I hope you do go to bed if you're still watching. But thank you for watching if you have done, and I'll be back tomorrow. From all of us here, bye-bye.
I'm Sumi Somaskanda. It's great to have you with us. U.S. President Biden gave a primetime Oval Office address in response to Hamas's attack against Israel. He said he will ask Congress for billions of dollars in funding for Israel and Ukraine. He said abandoning the U.S.'s allies was, quote, just not worth it. Mr. Biden's speech comes a day after his visit to Tel Aviv to show support for Israel. One result of that trip was an agreement with Egypt to allow some aid to enter Gaza. That assistance is yet to reach its intended recipients, but there is hope that it will begin flowing as soon as Friday. On the military side, Mr. Biden used his speech to lay out exactly how U.S. funds would help Israel. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's take a look now at some other headlines. The U.S. Army has charged the private who crossed into North Korea in July with crimes ranging from desertion to assault against fellow soldiers. That's according to documents obtained by the BBC's U.S. media partner CBS News. Travis King faces 8 charges in total, including one for solicitation of child pornography. Private King was released from North Korean custody in September. The Conservative Party has suffered a series of defeats in 2 parliamentary by-elections in England. The main opposition Labour Party overturned big majorities in the traditionally Conservative seats of Mid Bedfordshire and Tamworth by huge margins. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said his party's wins showed that the people overwhelmingly want change. And a member of former President Trump's legal team, lawyer Sidney Powell, pleaded guilty to 6 counts in the Georgia election interference case just a day before jury selection was set to begin. Powell was sentenced to 6 years of probation. She must also pay a $6,000 fine, testify at future trials, and write an apology letter to the people of Georgia. You're watching BBC News. Let's return now to President Biden's primetime address. And one of the challenges that he faced was convincing the American people why aid to Israel and Ukraine is so important. Have a listen. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on BBC News tonight. Great to have your voice.
Thank you for having me.
And just one more note for you on the Israel-Gaza war. Hundreds of people took to the streets of Paris on Tuesday to show their support for the Palestinians. The rally did start peacefully, but there were some clashes with the police. Last week, French authorities banned such gatherings, fearing broader unrest. But the country's highest court ruled that the ban infringed on people's right to protest. So authorities decided that they would evaluate protests on a case-by-case basis and approved this one at the last minute. All right, for more stories like that one, plus more on President Biden's primetime address, please visit our website, bbcnews.com, or you can check out our BBC News app. We have news there and analysis, live updates from our correspondents on the ground in Israel, Gaza, and around the world. That's all from us here in Washington. I'm Sumi Somaskanda. We leave you first with some images of the White House, where just hours ago, President Biden delivered his primetime address on Israel. And we move to London, where our colleagues will pick up at the top of the hour with the latest headlines. Thank you for watching.
Hello. Storm Babette continues to bring hazardous weather, not least